Hello to all of you chess fans. This is International Master Alex Kundin with my current lecture that is called Garry Kasparov, Winning with Style. In this lecture I'm gonna show you a game of mine against Garry Kasparov from the year 1996. He was then the reigning world champion, and it was a simultaneous game conducted in Israel, and I was summoned to it since I was a part of the Israeli youth team. So let's start. What would you think will be the first move of Garry? Garry played all the games with white, so it should be obviously e4 with the idea to crush me as soon as possible, right? I was 15 years old at the time and my elo was 22-25 versus Garry Kasparov 27-80. He had the white color again, so e4 and crush me soon. Not at all. c4 for various reasons which are kept with Garry. He opted not to enter the very sharp variations of the Sicilian which I played at the time, and he preferred just to crush me slowly but surely in the Karpov and Carlsen positional style. So all those matches between Karpov and Kasparov surely improved Kasparov's own positional game, and he could just as well play either e4 and all those sharp openings, but just as well he played all those closed openings, starting with d4, knight f3, c4, and you will see just that in this game. So he had the luxury of the choice. So far it's all theory, nothing interesting. Perhaps Garry has analyzed a few of my games before that simultaneous game. He was that serious, even playing a simultaneous game. He requested all the participants to send him a few games with both colors, white and black, for his analysis. I think he just wanted to see the style of the player and then try to divert the game into the type of positions which his opponent played worse. Let's say I was more a tactical player in my childhood, so that maybe this was one of the reasons for Garry to choosing this closed and relatively dull opening, which will, however, soon become very interesting. So this was the guy. Treated every game, even simultaneous one, very, very, very seriously. Even playing against a 15-year-old boy. Okay, so Queen a5 with the obvious idea of b5. Now the game has really begun. So far it was more or less theory. Okay, so what would Garry do? a4, disallowing me the counterplay. Okay, so knight g4, threatening the knight on c3, of course, but the deeper idea will soon be revealed. Queen d2, and now I played queen h5. So this maneuver, queen from d8 to a5 and to h5, has a very deep strategic foundation beneath it. So please find it. Well, the very deep strategic foundation was the idea to give a checkmate in 1 to the reigning world champion. Okay, that was a joke, of course, but seriously, after the almost forced move h3, now I played knight f6, and this was the real idea. The pawn on h3 is not very easily defended, and I think nobody would want to play both h4 or g4 with white. Due to quite obvious reasons, it weakens white's king's position, and Kasparov is probably the last person on earth that would weaken his own king position. Okay, he likes attacking his opponent's king, of course, but he rarely exposes his own king, surely without an adequate reason for that. So I thought he might play something like king h2, but then black can play check to g4, probably white retreats, and then black retreats as well, and we have a repetition here. And also if white retreats to h1, then also black can passively retreat to f6. Okay, although anyway king h1 doesn't look like a good move. It's better to retreat to g1. So it looks like black has a draw here, which is by all means not a bad result, even in a simultaneous game playing against the reigning world champion. Just by the way, he was able to beat most of the participants, even though some of them were already international masters. I wasn't at the time, and some of them were even grandmasters, okay? Something like 2500. So he was a beast even in simultaneous game at his prime. So is it a draw, Mr. Kasparov? I didn't offer the draw, but it was implied by the situation. So what would you do here? Well, I don't know what about you, but Gary has played here a strong move that goes like this: knight d5. No draws whatsoever, surely not in the opening. Okay, so suddenly it turns out that white doesn't have to defend the h3 pawn, but rather he can launch, let's call it a counter attack by himself. Okay, so now the pressure was already on me, and unlike Gary, I didn't opt for the best option. So what I should have played, think for a few seconds, it's not an easy one. It's quite a tough decision, but I should have played this move still, not being afraid by knight f4 due to this very nice tactical trick. Okay, he has to take with the bishop, of course, and now e5, and the pin on this diagonal obviously gives me the opportunity to regain the piece back, and white plays something like bishop g2 with only a slight advantage for white. Okay, whereas after taking on d5, which is what I've played, white was able to achieve a substantial advantage. So it was not a good decision by me, but it was not very easy to find this bishop takes h3 unnatural move. It was only discovered by Houdini. So knight takes d5, he took on g7, of course, and now what would you do? And yet again, I opted not for the best option. I should have played knight e3, okay, instead of taking on g7. Knight e3, and now white takes, and after taking on g7, obviously, white only has a slight advantage, not more than that. But I took the bishop immediately, and after c takes d5, my assessment of this position was wrong. I thought that since it was a symmetrical position, more or less, I thought it would be close to equality. Okay, maybe white has a slight advantage, which is very far from truth. Despite being a symmetrical position, white has a substantial advantage here due to the terrible coordination or miscoordination of the black pieces, and you will soon see how. The problem here is that black's knight has simply no good places to move. Now I've played knight a7, which doesn't look good, but still, you know, maybe the best option was knight d8, which doesn't look good as well. And here there is a threat on the h3 pawn. Knight d8 is just not a move any player wants to play. I mean, the knight here is stuck, he has nowhere to go, those rooks are badly coordinated, but still, somehow after h4, white has a substantial advantage, but black can probably hold this position by playing something like f6, and then knight f7, etc. So, black is worse substantially, but when the knight enters the game more or less on f7, black's position becomes reasonable. I mean, it's playable. So it was slightly better than the move I played. Knight a7. Now the knight will not enter the game in the near 10 moves or more. Okay. And now what would you do if you played white? So far Gary has played the optimal moves like he should have played the reigning world champion. What would you do now? Well, if you played h4, then you played like Gary Kasparov at his prime, but it wasn't the best move. A bit untypical to Kasparov, because he's a very energetic, I would even say hyperactive chess player. He didn't opt for the most aggressive option, which was also the best option, g4. g4 was a strong, aggressive move, earning in tempi, compared with the h4, and after this move, black plays something like queen h4. Doesn't have much choice, obviously. I think that if he goes to e5, he might even lose his queen, and the game would have ended, I think, much sooner. Yeah, I think it just loses the queen after this. Or if you go here, doesn't change much. So not a good idea. So obviously a queen h4, and now simply knight d4, and this is simply a winning position for white. You can trust me, you can check on various chess engines if you want, but the main reasons why white is winning here is the terrible placement or misplacement of the black pieces. His queen is out of the game, okay, on h4. His bishop has nowhere to go and he attacks basically nothing on d7. And his worst problem is his terrible knight on a7. With such a terrible coordination and lack of space to breathe, black simply suffocates and collapses under its own weight. And he, by the way, he has no reasonable defense against white's threats of queen b4 or queen a5, and then simply enter black's position via b6 or c7, or simply double rooks along the c file. So that is just a strategically one position for white. So it's a bit strange, but in this case Kasparov played the more relaxed move h4, which wasn't the strongest move in this position, but still keeping a substantial advantage. Okay, maybe he was afraid of the potential counterplay by the black after h5, but this is really nonsense, believe me. So okay, h4, rook fc8, knight e3, b5, trying to somehow miraculously re-enter this knight to the game, but of course it wasn't to be in the foreseeable future. Queen e5, rook c1. Since black is down in space, obviously he tries to swap as many pieces as possible, thereby relieving some pressure, but still white keeps a substantial advantage if he plays correctly. So b4, cementing this weakness on a6, maybe for the endgame where this bishop will be able to attack it, and also disallowing black to play b4 itself, because let's say if the queen moves, if this queen moves, black will happily play b4 and then enter either his knight via b5 to c3 or d4 to the game, or his bishop to b5. So b4 is just a strong positional move, quite natural. King f8. I'm trying to move my king to the d8 square to bring it to the c file, maybe close the c7 square to prevent from the white queen to enter it. Okay, and here, what would you play? Basically, there are two main options for white: either f4 or trading rooks first on c8 and then playing f4. What would you play? Because it's obvious that this strong centralized queen on e5 must be driven away as soon as possible. Well, if you played f4, once again, you played like the reigning world champion then, but it wasn't the strongest move yet again. Actually, it was a bad move. It was the first and the last serious mistake of Gary in this game. I even gave it a question mark in my annotations, since here, had Gary played first rook takes on c8 and now f4, he would have maintained his substantial advantage for obvious reasons, okay, in this endgame. But once he played f4, I think that the pressure of playing something like 20-25 simultaneous games against quite strong opponents, something from 2000 to 2500, it's not an easy task even for Gary Kasparov at his prime. So I presume that fatigue began to be a factor for him at this stage, or maybe he just got confused. You know, it happens when you play 20-25 games. I frequently get confused when I play one game and try to concentrate on it alone. So let alone playing 20-25 games, it happens even to the best. So probably it's a matter of a confusion and not of a bad assessment. And now I was able to put my queen on the d4, which is obviously good for me and bad for white. So obviously Gary has simply missed it, or I don't know. Okay, so now the position is suddenly equal. Okay, so king f2, equal by the way, by no means. By no means it says that we'll soon have a draw, but it only means that the position is equal. There is plenty of game ahead, and actually only 13 moves from now I was forced to resign. So reaching an equal position against a world champion means basically nothing. You can just look at 99% of Carlsen's games. King e8, queen a3. Well, obviously here I couldn't take on b4 due to queen c7. Yeah, so here it's already a threat. So queen a3. I think it's quite obvious, the mistake that Gary made a few moves ago. Now, black's queen is very strong, centralized. It unfortunately cannot attack or eat anything. I mean, it attacks a few pawns, but it cannot really cause any serious significant damage to white. But sticking white's queen into a3 was already a good achievement to see Kasparov's queen here and not along the c file. I was quite happy. So indeed the position is equal, but still one had to play it well, which I failed to do at a certain point. Okay, king d7. Now h5. Gary was resourceful enough to find some new ideas to put some blood and life into this otherwise dull endgame, because if we were players on the same level just playing a game, I think a draw would be agreed quite soon, because actually I think neither side has a serious plan to go ahead. I mean, black cannot really improve his pieces or pawn's positions, and so does white. So were we in the same category, we would have probably agreed to a draw. But in this reincarnation, I will probably not be in Kasparov's anywhere in his league. So h5, with the idea of maybe sometime playing h6 or taking on g6, and also asking the annoying question: what will black do? How will he advance his position? Sometimes to just stand on your feet and just move around can be challenging enough. You can easily make a damage to yourself. Okay, so bishop e4. I could have played simply knight c8 with an equal position, but I decided to trade as many pieces as possible, because still I was down in space. Of course, 1, 2, 3 white pawns are beyond the half, beyond the second rank, the fourth rank. So obviously white still has a special advantage. It's not as acute as it was 10 moves ago when we had lots of pieces on the board, but still. So bishop e4, Gary took here, I took, he took, I took. Now queen c3. Of course, Gary seized the first opportunity to return his queen to the game along those lines and diagonals. But still the position is equal, because now e5, of course, at a certain point black has to free itself. He took here, of course. Well, f takes e5 is, doesn't look good. Queen e5, and black has no problems whatsoever. Maybe he's even better due to a better pawn structure. So obviously Gary took here. And now what would you play? This is basically the critical moment of the entire game. Well, obviously f takes e6 is a terrible move due to queen g7 check and game over. But in the dilemma of taking with the king on e6 or with the queen, I took the wrong decision. Had I taken with the queen, it was basically an equal position, and perhaps I would have drawn this game, because actually the amount of pieces and pawns has quite substantially decreased, and with it also my ability to make mistakes, and so I believe that here quite likely that the game would have ended in a draw within something like 10-20 moves, maybe, because black's next moves are quite obvious: knight c6, etc. And it's just in equal position. From the c6 square the knight attacks this pawn, and it's just an equal position, that's it. However, I mentioned before the fatigue factor, so it worked not only on Gary but on me as well, just like on any other player that played against Gary. And at this point of time we had already played a few hours, and perhaps even Gary slightly pressured me by when you play a simultaneous game, when the player comes to your board, you are supposed to make a move. You cannot just think and think and think forever, even if that's a tough dilemma and you want to spend 20-30 minutes on it, although it maybe wasn't the case here, but still. So fatigue, pressure, just lack of ability perhaps, all those reasons led to me taking with the king, which was a terrible blunder, mistake. And after this move, white is already winning easily and quickly by force, but I want you to find it. Actually, Gary's next move was quite easy, and it's too bad I've missed it. Knight g4 with the winning position for white. Now there is no defense against white's entering the f6 square with the vengeance, either with his queen or even worse with his knight. So this move will obviously finish the game after knight f6 check, and actually there is no any reasonable defense against queen f6 check. Now this will of course encounter this check, but that's the way the game unfolded. I saw no other defenses against queen f6 check, and just crushing my position, my entire king's flank, those two pawns, and maybe even capturing the knight. So it's just a disaster. So I played queen f5, trying to somehow hold my position. Check, king d5 of course, and here it looks like perhaps black can still hold on his position. And I want you to think and find the best move for white. Well, guys and girls, if you remember, the title of this video is Garry Kasparov Winning with Style. So I once read an article where Kasparov said that whenever he had the choice between just winning, trivial win, or going for a beautiful, pretty, brilliant win, he would always go for the pretty one. And this game is an excellent example of this principle. He had a few winning options, and he could have simply taken this knight, and here it's not hard to see that white's pawn will soon be queened. So white is easily winning. Black has no counter chances whatsoever with any perpetual check, nothing. So I mean, here Black might just as well resign. Okay, this was the first win, and the second one was queen f3 check, winning easily as well. You can think and just see the continuations if you want. It's quite easy, in fact. But Garry has opted for entering his third and last piece into the game. Maybe it wasn't the quickest kill, but it was surely the prettiest win, and I remember seeing him smile. And it took me a few moves to realize why was he smiling, because obviously he saw the final brilliant position. And you will soon see it as well. That's why after thinking a few minutes, and believe me, Garry saw all those trivial winnings with the taking on a7 or queen f3 check. He saw everything. It's not very difficult. A few minutes of thought for Kasparov at his prime are enough to calculate this not very difficult position. And he opted for the most beautiful win, and thereby allowed me 90 years after that to conduct this lecture, which would otherwise be just another boring game, a technical win by Garry Kasparov, like Karpov or Carlsen do all the time. So no, Kasparov had his own brilliant style, so he entered his third and last piece into the game, while foreseeing in his mind the final position of this game. Okay, going for a pretty win. So what will Black do? Not too many choices for Black. Knight c6 will obviously encounter Queen b3 check, and here it's another beautiful ending to this game. Checkmate on the board, with only 6 pieces on the board. Yeah, only queens and knights, and still Black's king gets checkmated right in the center of the board. Beautiful. But of course I wasn't a sucker then as well, so I played knight c8, queen c3. Now it's such an obvious move that I'm sure all of you would have found it as well. So queen c3. And now what? There is a double threat, knight to e3 check, and the Black's queen cannot move due to the hanging knight on c8. So what would you do now? Queen e6, knight e3, game over, or knight f6. So queen d7, knight f6 again. So probably the only move, which still loses, but you know, just to play another couple of moves, was this. Queen e4 check, of course queen f2. And now what would you do? Still there are double threats, knight f6 check, and the knight on c8 is hanging, so this looks like the only move. And had Garry taken on d4, a draw would have been a good result already for him, because Black is better in the ending. But of course the entire idea of this brilliant but simple combination was this: check, obviously, and here, after some thought, I was forced to resign due to the fact that after the fourth move of queen e4, what would follow here? Not taking, because this is a draw, or Black could even be better. No, but instead, once again, checkmate with only queens and knights on the board. In the middle of the board, Black's king got checkmated. A very beautiful game by Garry Kasparov. Well, I resigned here after knight e3 check, and here Garry smiled once again, and this is how I understand that he probably saw this nifty combination when he played king f3. So not just winning, which is important and good and nice, etc., but winning with the style. Some beautiful, brilliant combination, and some artistry into the game of chess, and that was Garry Kasparov's style along his entire career. So it was a pleasure playing against him and even losing him on this occasion. So thanks for being with me. Thank you for your time. My data is available below, and if any of you want some lessons, I'm always ready to engage in such activities. So thanks and good luck, and play beautiful chess like Garry Kasparov, if not more beautiful. Thanks.